to call to order this evening's meeting for the Old Bridge, New Jersey Planning Board. And we'd like to rise and salute the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which stands
one nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Planning Board has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of the meeting by promptly posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, date, location, and agenda of this meeting, mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune, and filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk. Mr. De Palma?
Here.
Mr. Renna?
Here.
Mr. Lauer?
Here.
Mr. Mamakis?
Here.
Ms. Cannon?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
Mr. Lenning?
Here.
Mr. Petty?
Here.
Mr. Garcia?
Here.
Chairman Marucci?
Here.
Mr. Sardillo?
Here.
Ms. Sawant?
Here.
Mr. Garrity, who is on as well.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're all set. We are going to, we got notice that Bright Point Housing is requesting a continuance. So we're going to move that from the end of the agenda to the beginning. So Bright Point, is anyone representing Bright Point here this evening?
Hi, Amanda Curley from Mullens, Goldman and Spitzer.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we are just going to reschedule and push the hearing date. And we'll renotice and everything.
Okay. Okay, so do I have a motion to continue?
To August,
I'm sorry?
Yes, to August.
to the
To Au-
August meeting. I'll make,
Okay, did I hear a motion?
Ms.
Yes, I
Cannon
made
moved
the-
it.
I'll second it.
Okay, very good.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Renna?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis?
Yes.
Ms. Cannon?
yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. Lenning?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Chairman Marucci?
Yes. Good,
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so then, looks like we have several council referrals.
You have the minutes first of May 4th.
These are the minutes, okay, I'm sorry, let's skip over that. Okay, minutes, okay, minutes from May 4th. Do I have a motion for the minutes?
I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lauer, and a second
Second.
by Mr. Lenning.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Ms. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. Lenning?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Chairman Marucci?
Yes. Okay, so now on to the council referrals, and we have several. And the first one is Ordinance 2021-13. And it's an ordinance of the Township of Old Bridge amending Chapter 250 of the Code of the Township of Old Bridge entitled Old Bridge Township Land Development Ordinance by amending 250-38.1 entitled Economic Development Opportunity District Zones Design Standard. And Ms. Sawant?
Good evening, board members. This actually is an ordinance to rectify an error in the ordinance. As you all know, we have been improvising and perfecting this ordinance for the past 2 years. One thing, the zoning officer and myself, we realized is that the floor area ratio says minimum floor area ratio. It changes the whole meaning. It's typically in suburban communities, it's the maximum floor area, so that there is a limit on the footprint of the building, how high the building can be, and the total volume. However, in this case, it read as minimum floor area ratio. A minimum floor area ratio typically is used in urban centers where you have zero setbacks. You could build the entire lot and there is no setback between two adjacent buildings. So in this case, if you notice the ordinance, we have clearly distinguished the front yard, the side yards. We in Old Bridge have a buffer requirement for every property, whether it's EDO1, CC zone, all the zones. So there is something not consistent about it if we have the minimum. Plus, it would also mean that somebody can come and build the entire lot. We do have the landscape area ratio as 0.4, but which could also mean that you can build up to 0.6 as the floor area ratio. So we need to fix that. The change is only 2 words, one under EDO1 and the other under EDO3, which is from minimum to maximum. So the maximum allowable floor area ratio is. And the change is consistent with the master plan because we have been over the period of last 2-3 years improvising and perfecting this ordinance to make it more more user-friendly, and also so that it encourages businesses, and we pledge to support businesses in the township and allow non-residential uses. So it's consistent with the master plan.
Okay, thank you, Vina. Is there any questions from any of the board members? Okay, and Dawn, do we see any hands raised from the public?
I don't show any hands raised.
All right, we'll give it a few seconds. I don't think we need the whole minute. It's still nothing?
No, nothing.
All right, we'll put it to vote. Do I have a motion for the first council referral?
I'll move it, Ernie.
Moved by Mr. Schmitz, and a second
I'll second.
by Mr. Lennon. Thank you.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Renner,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Petty,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, thank you all. Now moving on to the second ordinance 2021-14, which is stated as an ordinance of the Old Bridge Township amending chapter 250 of the Code of the Township of Old Bridge entitled Old Bridge Township Land Development Ordinance by amending 250-40 entitled Permitted Uses.
Board members, this is again a cleanup of the existing ordinance. There are 2 contradicting requirements in the ordinance. One is that section 250-40 under permitted uses includes language that says that if a shopping center or a retail service that is more than 3 stores or more than 4,000 square feet in the CC or the CN, which is the commercial zones, neighborhood commercial and community commercial zones, it should be treated as a conditional use, and it directs you to the conditional use section 41C. If you look at the section 41C, there is nothing listed as a retail sale and services. Plus, even under the schedule of permitted uses, retail sale and services are treated as permitted uses. Again, this is commercial use. You do not want to restrain or create regulations that take you away from adding more commercial. So this regulation currently is not consistent with the overall goal of the master plan to be more to encourage more commercial type of uses within the township. In fact, it's an hindrance. And so I'm recommending that this section be eliminated because one, that based on municipal land use law, a conditional use without any conditions is considered as a use variance. So which would mean that anybody who is proposing retail sale and services in the community commercial zone or the neighborhood commercial zone, which no longer exists, community commercial zone was replaced by EDO 1 zone. But if anybody who wants to propose shopping centers or retail sale and services in these two zones would need to go to the zoning board instead of the planning board. And I want to eliminate that. So that's the proposed change in front of you. I'll take any questions.
Okay, any questions from any of the board members? Okay, and again, we'll open to the public. Any hands raised on?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. Again, we'll give it a few seconds. Okay, still no hands?
Still no hands.
Okay, we'll move it to a vote. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
By Mr. Lanning and a second
Second.
by Mr. Schmitz. Thank you.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes. Sorry, yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
It's okay. Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Petty,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, and the last council referral on the agenda is ordinance 2021-15. It's an ordinance amending the Code of the Township of Old Bridge to specifically 250-14 of the Land Development Code of the Township of Old Bridge entitled Prohibited Uses. Okay, Vina?
Actually, I would like the planning board attorney to speak on this matter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick background on this one. As some of the board may or may not know, New Jersey has adopted a new law entitled the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistant and Marketplace Modernization Act. Back in February 22nd of this year, Governor Murphy had signed it into law. This follows the recent vote at the last election legalizing recreational marijuana. Now, pursuant to this law, the law is, just going back, is about 200 to 300 pages. It's quite in-depth, has a lot of points and requirements of it. But in the end, it legalizes recreational marijuana uses and sales which is known as cannabis, if licensed, throughout the state of New Jersey. In doing so, it allows for certain businesses to operate, including retail, manufacturing, wholesale, and delivery. But it also allows for municipalities to prohibit those type of uses or operations, establishments within the borders of the municipality. It thereafter voids all ordinances that were adopted previously, and you have to adopt a new ordinance if you want such uses prohibited in the township. The problem is whether the township is interested in following and allowing these uses or not, the act provides a limitation on this ordinance for prohibition. you can, it allows 180 days from the date of signing into law which falls on to August 22nd, to enact an ordinance that will prohibit those types of establishments and uses. However, if you do not adopt an ordinance by that time, you are prohibited from doing so for a 5-year period. So that means if the township does not act, it cannot act until 5 years from August 22nd, 2021. However, even if you do act and adopt an ordinance that prohibits it, you can thereafter opt in, rescind those prohibited uses at any time during the 5-year period. So if you don't act, you're barred, but if you do act and you prohibit them, you can always later rescind that and allow the uses if it's permanent. Some of the factors going into this, which I've encountered in many of the towns I represent, including towns I'm the township attorney in, is where we don't have the regulations yet. The commission was established and authorized to adopt regulations, and they're supposed to adopt the regulations by August 2nd of this year. Even if they do, which it's looking based on their meetings and how much work they've progressed and how much work there is to be done, it's unlikely they will meet that deadline and will need to seek an extension. But even if they did, that's really not enough time for the township then to take in those regs, understand them, determine what it needs to do, and thereafter act if it wants to prohibit at that time. So what a lot of towns are doing, and Old Bridge appears to be doing the same thing, is enacting an ordinance that prohibits all of those uses and all the that are permitted to be prohibited under the act. And then once the regs are adopted, once they can digest and determine, do an underlying study, and determine if and where it makes sense to allow these type of uses in the township, it can then do so at its own pace and not be, limited in the time period to do so. You can, when you do allow it, can prohibit it in certain areas. So if we prohibit it throughout the whole town, then when we go back to allowing it, if the township decides to do so, it can determine what areas it wants to do, what types of uses it wants to do, and has a lot of control over that. The only one point I just wanted to make, it gets a little confusing for anyone who has read the act or read some of the articles about the act, is it says that the municipality can prohibit delivery services, but then it later on says, but you can't prohibit delivery services. What it means by that is you can prohibit the actual operation of the business in the township, meaning the headquarters where Uber, headquarters, so to speak, or a taxi service headquarters would be, where their base of operations. You can prohibit that within the township, but you can't prohibit the actual delivery of this of cannabis within the borders. That is prohibited. So even if you do prohibit all types of establishments and uses within the township, the actual ingesting use of or other use of the cannabis personally and the delivery of it can't be prohibited by municipalities. That's really a basic summary of the act and what is permitted and the actions that need to be taken on behalf of the municipality. What Old Bridge Township did is they enacted an ordinance, or they're in the process of doing just that, prohibiting all the uses, to then thereafter have time to evaluate and determine whether or not it wants to go back and allow any of them. That's the ordinance pending before you. I have reviewed it as well as the township planner with regard to consistency, and the master plan does not, the township master plan does not address these, as most townships don't, because this was not something that was foreseen back when a lot of these master plan amendments were adopted. So the terms of the statute in our review is the ordinance, is it deemed not inconsistent? So since there's nothing in the ordinance on that, then prohibiting would not be inconsistent with the master plan. So the consistency review would be permissible to be if the planning board so agrees.
Okay. Understood. Anybody have any questions? Dina?
Board members, I just want to chime in one thing. We already had an ordinance that actually prohibited business selling, distributing, cultivating, growing, and or facilitating the sale and or use of either recreational and or medicinal marijuana, including any ancillary or related paraphernalia. But what we are doing is this act established 6 classes of marijuana. So now we eliminated that section and we added a section that says that each of that class is prohibited. We just further expanded based on the new act that came in. So just a clarification.
Yeah,
So we always prohibited. Yeah, we always prohibited it. We're just now clarifying it with this ordinance.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question because I remember voting on that.
Yeah, just to clarify from a council perspective, when we discussed this, I guess was two or three meetings ago, it was really because we only have 180 days, right? Our old ordinance was kind of thrown out with the signing of this law. So what we're doing is we're really instituting our old ordinance back in place, which allows us to get the regulations, get what the group of folks that are coming together to kind of figure out what the state is looking to do. And then it allows us to make a more, a better judgment as to what and if we will allow within the township. Because as Mr. Sordillo said, if you don't act by August 22nd, it's 5 years and you can't do anything. We're just it's hamstringing every township, in the state. So that's what we're doing. I'm sure there, in the future, there will be further discussions surrounding what and if we will be allowing this in the township.
Okay, so when we go to vote, we're actually voting for the ordinance to prohibit it.
Yeah.
Then it will allow us later on, if so deemed, to rescind that and to change certain aspects of it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any more questions from any of the board members or any more comments? Okay, and this one we'll give a little more time when we open it to the public. Dawn, any hands?
No, no hands.
All right, I'll give this one a little more time. It's a little more of a sensitive issue. Okay, Dawn, still nothing?
Still no hands.
Okay, we'll close out the public session and move to a vote. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it, Ernie.
By Mr. Schmitz, and a second
I'll second it.
by Mr. De Palma.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Renner,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Petty,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Will. And last 3 items on the agenda are resolutions. And what we're going to do is I'll read all 3 resolutions. We will lump them into one vote in lieu of doing them all individually, if that's acceptable to everyone. Okay, so the first resolution is ordinance 2021-13. And it is an ordinance of the Township of Old Bridge amending Chapter 250 of the Code of the Township of Old Bridge entitled Old Bridge Township Land Development Ordinance by amending 250-38.1 entitled Economic Development Opportunity, District Zoning, and Design Standards. The second is ordinance 2021-14, an ordinance of the Township of Old Bridge amending Chapter 250 of the Code of the Township of Old Bridge entitled Old Bridge Township Land Development Ordinances by amending 250-40 entitled Permitted Uses. And the third and last is ordinance 2021-15, an ordinance amending the Code of the Township of Old Bridge, specifically 250-42 of the Land Development Code of the Township of Old Bridge entitled Permitted Uses. And it's just mirroring the council referrals. So we will vote on those three resolutions. And do I have a motion?
I move it.
Okay, Mr. Lauer, and a second
I'll move it. Second.
by Mr. Schmitz.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Renner,
Yes.
Mr. Lauer,
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis,
Yes.
Ms. Cannon,
yes,
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lenning,
Yes.
Mr. Petty,
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, and if I'm reading this correctly, that's the end of the agenda for this evening. So we're out
I
early.
think we just have to open it up to general public comment. Every public meeting, we just have to have general public comments. If anyone has any comments, anything that might even not be on the agenda.
Okay. We will open it to public general comments. And we'll give it a minute.
There are no hands raised.
All right. So we will we'll move to adjourn the meeting. And do I have a motion? I'll move it,
I'll second.
and Eric will second it. Sorry, Mr. Lowry, you're a little slow on the draw there.
Okay.
All right, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a great night.
You too. Thanks,
care.
everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night, everyone.
Good night.